Hi, Sol. Can you hear me now? I'm having internet issues and sound issues, but I think we're up and running now. So I'll say again, welcome to the Webster Report. And it's just so happens that's good timing because my guest Clive has just come straight on at the right time. I'll bring you in straight away, Clive, and you can introduce yourself because, like I said, I've just been saying to myself, obviously, because there was no sound. I had internet issues last week and it was touch and go whether we could have gone live last week, but we decided to leave it till this week. So hopefully we've got you, we've got sound, we've got everything. You're just muted at the minute, Clive. I can't unmute you.
Yeah, we've got everything. It's absolutely right. We have it all.
Sorted. Clive, welcome to the show. Thank you for well, it's Lou that actually got in touch with me to see if you could come on the show. Now, you've been doing your work for quite a while, a bit like myself, a bit like Lou. We've been on, there and thereabouts, trying to work out all this. I don't even know what adjective to use these days, but tell us a bit about yourself, Clive, and what you do.
Well, sure. Very briefly, I had a weird experience when I was 11. I was fishing in somewhere that the water was crystal clear. We could see everything. And I didn't want to put the live maggot on the hook. And I really didn't want to catch a fish because then I'd have to take the hook out of the fish's mouth. The person I was with, he didn't care. He didn't care. And he caught 20 fish and I caught none, basically, in the course of the day. But each time he'd catch a fish, I was only 11, so I said, look, give me your fishing rod. And we could see the fish. Each time he took his hands off the fishing rod and I touched it, the fish were no longer interested in the bait. And we were in the Caribbean, so there were thousands of fish. And all afternoon we observed this, and I realized that they were reading my mind, that the fish they knew I didn't want to catch them, so they were giving themselves up to my friend, but not to me. And then when I was 15, I suddenly found myself floating on the ceiling. I was having an out-of-body experience, and I realized that you are not your body. And I had lots of out-of-body experiences. And then I was very entrepreneurial, did lots of different things. And then suddenly I get a phone call one day. I've got I had an organic farm at that point. And I got this phone call saying, well, we've just sold your contact lens company. And so I rethought my whole life. What do I want to do? And I decided, well, I'd look into health. I realized that so many people were ill. But prior to that happening, when I was in my very early 30s, I'm 67 now, in my early 30s, I took one antibiotic, massive mistake on the one hand. I became so arthritic that one day I couldn't get out of bed. I no longer had the strength to maneuver myself out of bed. I tried to put my socks on. I couldn't. I was stranded in bed. Luckily, I had somebody in the house. And they took me to hospital, and I'd become type 1 diabetic. All sorts of things happened. And weeks and weeks in hospital, they said, well, there's nothing we can do. You're a hopeless case. Nothing we can do. But all the arthritis went away because I learned how to fix myself. And now, 35 odd years later, no arthritis, no twinges, no nothing. It's all absolutely fine. And then shortly after that, my dad's best friend got cancer for the second time, told me there's no way he could survive surgery and everything again. And he copied me, but did it a bit better. He started taking 35 grams of pure vitamin C every day. And when he did die, which was 20 years later, he'd been told he got weeks to live. When he did die 20 years later, it wasn't from cancer. So, those were a couple of the reasons why I decided I'd actually just sort of start studying health, realizing the doctors didn't study health. It's called the health service, but virtually no point is health studied. They study drugs. They get a license to be a doctor because they're administering poisons. And just like, 007 license to kill, you can get a license for that kind of craziness. I'm not saying every medicine is bad. I'm not saying every doctor is wrong. But I was shocked as to the more I discovered. For instance, did you know that in the 5 years at medical school in England and the States, generally speaking, doctors do about 4 hours on health and nutrition. All the rest is
Yeah.
drug. And
Exactly.
yeah, I liken it to, you want a nice steak for dinner, so you go into the hardware shop and ask for a steak. Well, if you've lost your health, going to a doctor with the hope of getting your health back, well, that's not what they do. They give you drugs to dull the pain for a while or subdue the symptoms. When of course it's not about subduing symptoms, it's all about figuring out what did the person do wrong in the first place.
Well, that's where we're at, isn't it, Clive? Because a patient cured is a customer lost, and that seemingly is what the health service is where it's aimed at. But it's such a big picture. But you can't, we can focus on health. We can focus on the economy. We can focus on all kinds of things, and we can get lost in each and every subject because you go, well, there's corruption there, there's this and that, but it's everywhere. It's in every facet that controls our society and our system. Thank you, by the way. You watched the videos that I've done explaining to people that the people that you trust the most, your parents, they taught you that this is life and how to live. Well, if they've been lied to as well, then that's all you're going to have to keep passing on and passing on. And they've had it such their own way all this time. You go into a doctor and you're going to get treated. The symptoms will be treated, but whatever drug it is that treats the symptoms, inevitably there's a drug to treat the symptoms of the first drug and so on. So where did you, what made it for you? What drew the line? Now, obviously you said that you're going to focus on health. How did you eventually get rid of all that arthritis and those conditions?
Oh, well, that was easy, really. What it was, I couldn't lift a book; it was too heavy. But I could turn pages on a book prop, and I realised after about 3 weeks of just studying, I got my wife to bring me in everything I needed to know. I was already into homeopathy and herbs, and right from the start, I'd been into natural medicine. I went to the doctor because I didn't know enough at that point to know how I could possibly fix myself. But I figured it out while I was in hospital, and I got wheeled out. And I took a few simple materials that all of us, our bodies are made of the same things. Magnesium is number one. I had calcifications on all my joints. All my joints are all inflamed and horrible. And many people have calcified joints, or they might have calcified arteries, or whatever it might be, calcifications. So from a basic sort of point of view, what reverses calcifications? Well, magnesium essentially dissolves calcium. So anybody with arthritis, if I may, if I just quickly run through the magnesium symptoms, because I would suggest that probably 90% of everybody listening to this are low on several things, probably the most important one arguably being magnesium. Shall I run through a few symptoms?
Yes, please do.
So, somebody only has to have one of these. You might get hiccups. Which are spasms, right? You might get cramps. You might have menstrual cramps. You might wake up in the morning and stretch and get, a cramp in your legs or your foot or something like that. You might have heart arrhythmia where your heart is beating out of rhythm sometimes. You might have had a heart attack recently. You might have sleeping issues. You can't rest. You maybe have panic attacks, anxiety, high anxiety. You might be constipated. The list goes on and on. You might have restless leg. You might have cancer. So many human issues, health issues, are a magnesium deficiency. I must add, for legal reasons, that if I use words like cancer or cure, I'm spelling them with a K for legal reasons, because I'm not allowed to give medical advice. I don't do medicine. I do remedies, health. Right, it's the opposite. The national health system is the opposite of health, really. It's just, as you know, disease management.
Yeah, I interviewed David Noakes a while back.
Yeah, I saw that interview that you did, because I knew David really, really well, because I made a video with him right early on that had the highest viewing figures about GCMAF of any of them. But then Marco Ruggiero, the inventor of that version of GCMAF, phoned me up one day and said the death threats were getting too much. would I please take down every video I'd ever made with him? So I've done loads and loads of videos all about that subject. Because everybody was either getting locked up or threatened with death.
It's well, this is the side of things that people don't understand. After I'd interviewed David and people were talking to me about it, because they were interested in the cure with the K, they were interested in stuff like that. But all I ever got was, oh, they're just in it for the money. They're just anything to make money. I'm going, do you not see what this man is saying? That for the fraction of the cost, he's getting results. There's actual results being shown here for a fraction of the cost when we're using millions upon millions, and you could be going into billions on treatments that don't actually work. I mean, I've got people who'll like be advocates for chemo because they've had chemotherapy, Clive, and they're cured. They've come away being cured. Yet you see so many people who are not dying from cancer, but they're dying from the effects of that chemo. And for me, if it was me and my illness, I want something the easiest, the simple, and the cheapest. What is that? And that's, we just seem to touch on such a fraction. We've got frequencies, we've got all kinds, and it's just such a tightly kept. It's not even a secret that it's tightly kept. But we've just got to be all kept away from these natural remedies, and we've got to go to see people that know better than us. And that's what this society is designed from. From economic, can't get the words out. From economics right through to health, they've got control of all our information. If you want to get into something and you want to change, it's like I've had interviews with MPs and councillors. Now, for me, Clive, if they were going to run on the type of the bills of exchange, where you're talking to people about setting off bills instead of trying to pay them in a debt-based economy, people would not only win, but you would talk about balancing books. But who's going to get into Parliament in this system and with such a radical idea? Because what you're suggesting is that we don't need the chemo and stuff like that as just the go-to thing. There's so many other things, but we get. I mean, I remember on UK cancer research on I think I was looking at anti-neoplastons at the time with Brzezinski from America, and it came up about cannabis. There are no known benefits of cannabis with cancer. They're not telling lies, are they, Clive? Because they've not done the test, they've not done anything, so they're not telling lies. We had it with the utilities about 7 years ago. We were on Panorama without being named. It was a Panorama program, and the narrator was telling you what was going on, but it showed them drilling a lock, and then it showed them finishing off fitting a pay-as-you-go meter. Well, it was in two different parts of the country. The lock they were trying to drill was a titanium lock that they couldn't get in, and then it cut to Leeds where they finished fitting a pay-as-you-go meter, and they said over the top of it, these companies can apply for warrants and fit pay-as-you-go meters. Absolutely true. However, they can't break into a private property and fit a meter. It's only a business that they can do that because it's commerce. It's all about commerce. Because we're dealt with as all commercial capacities, they believe they're doing nothing wrong. So when I went into that system and I said, well, hang on a minute, banks aren't lending money, blah, 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 they turned on you. That, armed police were called because you're asking questions about a system that takes all the equity from all of us, Clive, and gives it to a very few people who sit around and laugh at us. And they do it through, we've got serious stuff going on now here with this. I don't know what you want to call it, the tests that are going on right now. I think we're talking worse than concentration camps and medical tests compared to what we're doing now, Clive.
Well, you already know, but this is World War III, and most people have not realized that it's the war against humanity. And right now, the forces of evil, one might say, for want of a better word, are winning hands down. They've managed to hypnotize mind control, what, 90% of the population, more maybe. So it's a very interesting situation. But of course, the people who are awake are making a lot of noise, but of course they're no longer found on Google. You know, my YouTube figures, the number of viewers I get has been static for ages. It used to go up, you know, all the time, and then it just went down. They knocked my figures right down, because if you got low figures, then, well, not many people are looking at that. You know, when I was working with the UK column, one day all of us saw overnight, you know, like a naught taken off all the viewing figures. You know,
Yeah.
4,000 became 400, 40,000 became 4,000. It was, you know, when I was with the UK column, the first time we got attacked was, I think, 2014, maybe 2015, where the government gave us 24 hours to take all our videos down for being too television-like. And they said to me that I would have to present my scripts, and I mean, I don't do scripts, 2 weeks beforehand, so they could approve my health advice. That was what they were trying to do back then. Now, of course, they've pretty much done it, but they've, you know, obviously what's going on now has been planned for decades. You know, there's people think, oh, you know, Boris is such a buffoon, he's making a mistake. No, he's not.
No, he's not.
Everything is scripted and planned, and it's been that way for a very long time. But it's very sad.
That's why Boris Johnson. Go on, sorry, I cut you off. Then go on.
No, it's right. I mean, it's just a shame that people are mind controlled. And I put out an article recently called "How to Speak Zombie." You know, how to use the power of words to get through to people. You know, the idea of non-violent communication. You know, a simple example of which is, you, rather than just saying to somebody, "Don't you know that the holes in masks are so big that the virus particles supposedly go right through it," or trying to give them some fact, you say, first of all, something along the lines of, "I learned something really, really interesting last week. You know, maybe you haven't heard it. Really amazed me. Would you like me to explain what I learned?" Because the moment you say something, as you know, that is offensive to somebody's existing ideas, like the vaccines don't work or whatever it might be you want to say, immediately they get defensive, because you've attacked them. It's like punching them in the head. You've attacked them with this vicious, nasty idea. But if you've asked permission to tell them this new idea first, at least you've crossed the first barrier of stupidity.
Yeah, I think what I've found more frightening was the way that they're using the language now, and people are, you know, I've seen it happen so quickly. You know, we've gone from, it's only a matter of months that they were putting on mainstream news here. You know, I think it was Good Morning Britain, Susanna Reid was asking the poll, is it time to ditch your unvaccinated friends? Well, where you're looking now in New Zealand, you know, that Prime Minister is actually saying it is going to be a two-tiered society. And if you're not going to get vaccinated, you're not going to have the benefits. And people are, I don't know if it's just because we're not getting the full information, but for me, I'd be thinking everybody should be in uproar at this, but they're not. They've actually, in Australia, they've taken polls because it's been costing the state so much money to quarantine people in 5-star hotels. They've asked the people, do they think it's a good idea we build purpose-built quarantine camps? Well, they were already being built, but they've got the confirmation that the people have said, yeah, if it'll save us money. If they've turned the people against themselves. And I never thought I'd see it. Maybe I thought that we know a bit better now. You know, this is World War II stuff still happening now. They haven't changed the gameplay, Clyde. It's exactly the same rule book that they're rolling out with a new set of people. But when you point this stuff out now, you're racist, you're all this kind of thing. And now I'm apparently, you know, the one thing that could actually take my mind away from things, and it's not because of anything other than how beautiful the game is of football. I used to be absolutely obsessed with it, Clive. I've got a team now in Liverpool that's not only won the league, not only the Champions League, is one of the most untouchable teams at the minute. I should be loving me football. But when you have a football manager who should stick to football, but compares me to a drink driver because I'm unvaccinated, then I think that's dangerous, because you've taken season ticket money off people, and now you're these people. I think what it's being done is, and maybe he's one of these useful idiots that we see a lot of these being wheeled out now, Clive. I mean, look at this Insulate Britain crap. These are funded and organised idiots that are going to end up in court with court orders and legislation that will be so vague, sitting on a motorway will be applied to you sat in a cafe next. That's how vague the legislation will be.
Well, that clearly in war, you try and subjugate everybody in every way you can. You divide and rule. You probably know, I mean, let's say Liverpool, who funded who funded Everton after Liverpool? It was the Masons. Divide and rule. So a city gets too powerful, too many people could come together supporting one football team, so you put a second one in, Manchester City. That's how they've always done it, divide and rule, and they're ever making smaller and smaller divisions, or larger and larger ones. They have very successfully divided the country, haven't they?
They divided everything, Clive. I mean, when you've got when you've got the leader of the Labour Party who finds himself unable to say that a man does not have a cervix on television. He found himself unable to state that absolute fact. Now, that's scary, because, a little side story. Andy Burnham used to be my MP, and he gave us this misguided bus route to Manchester, right? Everybody wanted a train station, but we got this bus route. And it's quite a beautiful area to have a walk around. I was sat on this bus route one day, just sat in the wildlife, and this old couple come walking past me, and she saw what was on my shirt, and she misread it. And she said, "Oh, I was watching a programme on the Holocaust this morning." And I said, "It doesn't say Holocaust, that, love." She went, "Oh, no, it doesn't." Oh, anyway, and she carried on with the story. And she says, "It didn't," and it was like a Scooby-Doo thing, Clive. It's like she looked left and she looked right, and then she went, "It didn't start with army on the streets asking for papers, I went, "Did it not, love?" I said, "How did it start?" She went, "Control of language, changing people's language and changing what people thought of people. So the immigrants were like put down, and they came after the immigrants, and it was how it started." I went, "Well, yeah." I said, "That's makes a lot of sense." I says, "But we've already got that mix up with language now." I told him about the driver in the motor vehicle. "Are you the driver of this motor vehicle? We think that's a steering wheel and a mechanically propelled metal box, and it's just so not in language that we don't know about." So if we're kept away from this kind of information, how much more, considering the English language has 8 words to describe one thing? There's a lot of messing about and a lot of shenanigans that we can do with that. And that's the reason why they patented it and put it out into the civil law community. If they'd have kept us in Europe, Clive, for me, we'd have already been in the trouble what Australia's in and the trouble what France are in. At the moment, they still kind of find it illegal, even though everything that they're doing is completely legal. And what people don't understand is that the people that they think are the worst kinds of people, Mao, Stalin, Hitler, Churchill, all these people did nothing illegal. So they just keep passing more legislation. People don't understand that the coronavirus bill means a copper can come straight into your house without warrant, detain man or adult or child on just on the suspicion of having COVID-19 that has no symptoms possibly. So that's a very, very big sweeping rule to put into legislation for emergency powers and then say, well, we're not going to use it. No, you don't put anything in legislation that you're not going to use. If it's there, that's there for a reason. If you then take the fact that we've been under a martial law for 200 years, the BBC TV license, they look for the occupier until they've got hold of somebody. It's so simple when you break it down to what we've been taught. People think these people are really clever. They're not, Clive. They're not clever at all. They've just had all the cards. In the video I did, it's the Monopoly game. We're taught how to play the game. We're not taught how to win. And banks never go bankrupt, especially in Monopoly. They write it on a piece of paper. So we can never win without understanding the full set of rules. But Love Island's on. It's a struggle, Clive.
Well, quite. I mean, you go to a posh school like Eton, and they're going to talk to you about equity law, and they're going to talk to you about the meaning of words. But in the regular schools, and it would appear with lawyers, most lawyers don't seem to really know about equity law as opposed to the other versions, do they? I mean, you know way more about this than I do.
Well, I spoke with a guy who was actually he got sent down for tax evasion, and he looked at me and I shook my head laughing. He went, "We all do it, Webby. We all do it. We all do the tax dodge." He said the only problem is that somebody messed up on our level and the big boys didn't get paid. So they cut the rope and they sent us all down. They put us all into jail to teach everybody else a lesson. Now, this guy was, he wasn't a barrister and he wasn't a solicitor. He was a commercial lawyer, so he's like an in-between. I said, so you know about commercial instruments, negotiable instruments? He says, yeah, of course I do. And I said, well, you get this negotiable instrument attached to your gas bill. It's a joint giro credit check. You're meant to sign it, date it, give it back to your billing agent, and they set your debt off, which will lower the national debt. And he sat down and looked at me, Clive, and went, I've done my job for 25 years and I've never looked at it like that. Now, this man could have been, he could have been teaching people, he could have been showing people, but that's how good this compartmentalization is. The factor is we aren't taught what a debt-based economy is, what a creditor and debtor are. We know the words, Clive, but we don't know how we're meant to act. So who teaches us that? Well, my mum taught me. She ran businesses. Don't pay your gas bill till you get the red one. Then pay it. Don't give them something they're not entitled to. That was the attitude that I was brought up with. Well, when I found out that I shouldn't have been paying it because we're taught that, Clive, and we promise to do something with that debt, the Treasury never gets to balance the books. So the national debt just keeps going up. So the government then must step in with austerity. And it's a great scam because Alex Thompson said to me when he went to Eton, and I said to Alex, you're taught the Bills of Exchange Act by the age of 13 at Eton. And he said, of course, Paul, how else do we steal all your equity and leave you with all the debt? Now, Alex wasn't even involved in banking, but the banking system handpicks all these generations of people and puts them through this system. And I genuinely don't think that they all know, because I think they all live in one world that's just how we operate. They're not interested in the rest of us. We've just had our council tax here case has now been retired in this country because they can't tell us that we're right. They've got to take it right to the end. And because we can't finish it in this country, we've got to go to higher court. And that higher court, Clive, is not in this country. It's in Europe. It's in Europe and not in this country because they've known about this scam all the time. They've stolen everything. People that nobody's ever owned anything in this system. You can't own anything. They're just going to tell you the truth now, Clive, but you're going to keep promising to rent things like your trainers and your pants. This is going down the toilet pretty quick. And I've seen this coming for like yourself and others for about 10 years, but I didn't think I'd see it so quickly, possibly even in my lifetime.
Well, we're certainly in a very interesting, interactive piece of theatre right now. I think it's important for people to choose optimism because it's way too depressing if you start worrying about what might go wrong. It's absolutely crystal clear what they want to do. What's next. But it is a huge leap for most people to accept the fact that war is as dirty as it is, and they will do everything for totalitarianism. So, that if they don't do a lockdown this time, obviously they're going to do a lockout where unvaccinated can't do anything like eat. And it's pretty important that people realize that it stops now. We have to peacefully not consent and not comply immediately with any of it. I've never worn a mask. I would never dream of getting tested. If I go to a restaurant, I give my name as Duck Donald, living in Florida, and we all have to take a view of non-compliance, because everything about it is, wrong in every way, immoral, psychopathic. There's only one problem in the world, isn't there? And that's that there are psychopaths running it. That's the only problem.
Psychopathy. That's it. And the best type of person, if you think of it this way, to be in charge of accounts and balance sheets is a psychopath or a sociopath, because they can tick all these boxes and save 20 million, but kill 12,000 people. But that doesn't matter. They'll sleep like a baby at night.
Well, it's actually, I mean, look at the boss of Pfizer or the boss of any of those big corporations. Their job is to make money. If you and I went to them and said, look, here's the cure for diabetes, for instance, you can have it for free. We don't even want any money for it. They would get sacked immediately, because obviously they have to close their insulin factories down and the testing equipment factories down, and they have to lay people off. So the CEO of a corporation, his job is to make money, not to destroy his own company by allowing a cure to come to light. Hence why David Noakes was put in jail.
Yeah. It seems like it's a sealed shop for them, isn't it? You can't bring anything new forward if they can't make money for it. And again, that's nothing new. When JP Morgan was funding Nikola Tesla and he found out he wanted to give free electricity to people, there was no way he was going to ever keep being funded for that. But what you've got here, Clive, is you seem to have everybody. I know that the mainstream news media, it's aimed at the consciousness of like primary school children for an attention span. So people think that they've got knowledge of subjects because they've got sound bites from about 6 different subjects, and then there's football on top of that. But they're not understanding some of the terminology that has changed. Because maybe it's because I'm quite deep into all this stuff. I see things that some other people don't. When I saw that the EU Withdrawal Act states that Parliament are now sovereign, well, if Parliament are sovereign, that changes something for me, because that means I'm not sovereign. So what am I? Well, I'm back to being just that employee. Well, if I'm just that number and that employee number, that means we're all talking commercial civil law again. So this is just the next bit to keep rubbing and erasing that common law out. They've done a great job down in Australia and New Zealand, because people can get taken off the road for 2 hours because they got caught with a window up or something. I don't know, something ridiculous that they make up. But they've all complied with that. They're doing it slowly but surely here. But even people now, when I found this out, I cried myself to sleep. My family had all been double vaxxed, and I was gutted with it. And they just think, well, I've done this research and we think we've done the right thing. We've done it on, and they've done it on the research that they know about. But they're not interested that I've spoken to a virologist or 2 virologists or however many immunologists. But when you've got a former CEO of Pfizer, a vaccinologist saying, listen, this vaccine, and I'll put that in speech marks, but this vaccine, it's a brilliant vaccine. It really is. It's going to create lots of really good, strong antibodies. However, the vaccine rollout, you are going to give it to people who haven't had the infection. Therefore, the antibodies will not recognize an infection, possibly block your entire immune system from stopping that infection, which can get through to your organs, treble in strength, become a superbug. Then you pass that on to another vaccinated person, and the same thing happens. We have what he called was an immunity catastrophe. Now, if that's not enough to stop you in your tracks from thinking about injecting your kids with it, I don't know what is, Clive, because we're in some very, very dangerous waters that I never thought people I've known 30, 40 years have lost their minds over this stuff. People sneeze near them and they're jumping into bushes to get out of the way. It's not so much as bad as that now, but this time last year, it was monumental. There was no common sense. Everything had completely broken down. And, you're trying to talk to people to get common sense, and you find yourself being attacked. And, you know, I've been in this game a long time, Clive. I've done me fighting. Here's me information. I don't want to fight with you anymore. There's me information. If you don't want to use it, you know where to go. But don't just keep coming, calling people names and saying, well, you've not done that and you've not got this court order that says you won this. It's not going to work like that, Clive. You know yourself, this system is designed to take everything. And as soon as somebody puts their head up, they've got to treat everything like a nail, and they hammer everything down. I had over 30 odd coppers over 5 hearings over a sale of a house, Clive. You know you're asking some decent questions.
Yes, quite. So there are a lot of solutions to everything, I think. You know, clearly there are health solutions. There are solutions to many. I mean, you know, let's do just a few what ifs. What if Bitcoin had taken off? You know, because it hasn't really taken off. What if it really had? Then we could tomorrow change currencies on world governments. You know, they could no longer pay their army of enforcers because their money doesn't work. You know, we could change the entire world system overnight by changing currencies on the world governments. You know, we just agree to sort it out for ourselves. I'm not saying it would be easy, but the tool, i.e. Bitcoin, is there, set up to do it. You know, in Africa, you know, loads of tradings now happening on mobile phones with Bitcoin, cutting the governments out, and they hate that. You know, there is very much a race right now. You know, what if the world proposed that we, the world, took Google, Amazon, Twitter, Facebook, and so on into the private, so or into the public, whatever way you want to phrase it, so that you know they've all made enough profits; they don't need more. So we make it non-commercial. We make it for the benefit of everybody. You know, because Amazon is incredibly useful. It's crushing small businesses and employing people at slave labor, but nevertheless, it is incredibly useful. Google used to be incredibly useful, and if we took those sort of utilities back, if we stopped corporations being treated like a private individual would, and you made the directors all liable and suable individually, you know, we could instantly change the face of everything that goes on in the world if we just removed the psychopaths from running the joint and put in people who actually care, and then not leaving them in that position for very long, because unfortunately power does corrupt. So, you know, you do it on merit. Somebody who really deserves to be in the place, somebody who's not doing it for the money, they're not doing it for the prestige or the power or whatever else. They really care. And there are, you know, most of us in the world actually do really care. There are, you know, a few percentage of people who are the psychopaths. Right. And then there are a few percent who are the minions of the psychopaths. But we could change the world in a day, actually, because all the answers to everything, you know, what about energy? What about how do we feed the world? There's answers galore. I mean, have you seen what the Chinese are doing regrowing deserts? They found a shrub that they can drill this, I think, 1 meter or something hole, and they take the seed of the shrub in a ball of material that's all the food and will retain all the water it needs. And it's one of these very rare shrubs that can grow in sand once it's got a head start, and it's strong enough to resist the horizontal desert winds, which normally would rip any vegetation down. So once that grows, then they can grow stuff behind that and behind that, and they are reclaiming desert at a fantastic rate and to feed their population. Now, you know, who's heard about this? There are, you know, literally we could talk for hours about what the wonderful things that people have discovered. I mean, let's just talk bees for a second. You know the die off of the bees that's been talked about and has been happening, and millions of bees die. Well, whatever the cause is, they found that shungite, you know, the rock shungite, if you put that on the entrance to the hive, the shungite seems to fix the issue. And I think it's maybe mites or bacteria, or maybe it's 5G or whatever it is. Anyway, it works. So the bee population is saved if enough beekeepers knew about shungite. You know, the problem is we don't know the answers. They're all there, you know, but average people you don't know what you don't know.
Well, we've said it on the shows a lot, Clive, that most people will do nothing until that knock on the door happens to them, until it affects their life in some whatever way possible. Nobody will do anything. I don't think I would have got involved until they told me that what they were going to do, which was take everything, take my property, and they were going to do this. And you think, well, hang on a minute, I own that. Where do you get your authority? And that's when you cause major issues. There was a question in the chat room, Clive. I don't know if you've picked up on it, but what are your thoughts on magic mushrooms for healing and expansions of consciousness?
The plants in the plant world, the mushroom world, what I realized is that everything has consciousness, and if you take a magic mushroom, for example, psilocybin, for example, then it's as though it's a teacher. I mean, if you think about the mushroom world, under our feet right now, if the ground hasn't been dug up, there is a net, a mycelial net of this fungus network, and they found unbroken fungal networks that are 20 miles long, 30 miles long, and the roots of the trees, you probably know, tend to join together. They support one another in a net. There's an underground internet and the trees and the mushrooms work together in symbiosis very often. Just, we are one. The world is just one. So everything really should be in symbiosis. But unfortunately, psychopaths have stolen our world. At one point, we like wild animals were in our forest. We knew it intimately. And at some point, some bastards came along with nasty weapons and said, this is now our forest. We are going to call ourselves king, and you're going to pay us taxes and worship us. And, we're going to set up Disney to make all young girls think that princesses are the right thing and want to be one, when in actual fact they're, going to be the slave mistresses. But, sorry, I've forgotten the question now.
What about mushrooms and
magic mushrooms
and things like that?
So my experiences, and I've taken many magic mushrooms, and I've probably tried every psychoactive that exists, probably, and I've found it to be enlightening. I've found myself many times in that state that people who meditate are trying to get to, a state of complete oneness, nirvana, whatever you want to call it, where, and I've had that experience where literally I'm one with everything. I really, for a time, am one with the universe, understand the totality, the oneness of the whole thing. And magic mushrooms can be hilarious. And the simple thing is, if somebody's never tried LSD or mushrooms or whatever it might be, first thing is to understand that it's the only sensible way to start is with 1/10 of what anybody else is taking. Because the first time you do magic mushrooms, they are powerful because you're opening a portal in the mind, or whatever, however you want to think about it. And there's this immense new experience because you're seeing colors differently, you're hearing sounds differently, you're looking at if you like, a more atomic level at things. A blade of grass might interest you for a few seconds, but when you suddenly see the complexities, you're able, in many cases, to see a much deeper level of things. Are there other dimensions? Are there other universes? Well, I've seen universes stacked on top of one another. All, here we are looking at the hills, say, but you can also see another universe. I mean, extraordinary stuff. I mean, I used to do experiments with people on mind reading. You say to somebody, right, I want you to, with a pen and paper, write down what you're thinking of now. And like 8 out of 10 people write down giraffe, or so, extraordinary things. So we are, because we're all one, we are actually in tune with everything. Our intuition is right. Give you an example. You're walking down the street, and there's your friend. I was just thinking about you, or you're thinking about your friend, and the phone rings. We know stuff, and the powers that be, the people who educated us in the child indoctrination camps, they do not want you to know how powerful you are. I mean, I used to do a stage act where I would take people's strength away using a couple of Tai Chi tricks. I wouldn't touch them, but I'd make them go weak. They don't want, people don't want you to know, the powers that be don't want you to know just how amazing our mind is. Let me give you an example. I like using frequency devices as tools for recovery. It might be the old-fashioned frequency devices might have been a tuning fork or a gong or whatever it might be, but I like the ones that you plug into the wall. And I had at one point I had 4 frequency devices I just bought, really, really pleased with, and I wired them all up together. And I had this person who wanted to be treated for an eye issue, a sight issue, brain fog, and pain. So I treat them, and at the end of the session, they are miraculously happy. It's like my best result that year. And I looked over and I realized I'd forgotten to turn the machines on. They'd had a complete, suddenly they could see clearly, think clearly, and the pain had gone, and it was them. It was their mind. So, years ago, I studied hypnosis, 25 years ago or something, 20 years ago, because I realized how powerful the mind was. And, if somebody believes the doctor who says you've got 3 months to live, as it's very likely they might die in 3 months. But if they believe that they're going to live, and they take the effort and put the effort in to make sure they live, I've seen people with 2-3 days left to live suddenly come right round again and recover. The doctor said that they were irrecoverable, irreversible. It's genetic damage from way back when. This year I've seen people who have taken a couple of supplements maybe, and at 20 years old, suddenly they're back in the world, having been autistic or whatever it is. They were told it's incurable. Your problem is incurable. That's because the doctors don't know how to do it. So they say it can't be done. We don't know how to do it, and we're doctors, so obviously it can't be done. But the body is self-repairing. We self-repair.
We're born into a sick environment, and everything that is designed for us seems to be designed to make us sick. From talking from my childhood and growing up, from fillings to, at least we kind of ate food. Even my mum wouldn't buy what she called processed crap. Well, what chance do many families have these days, Clive? Buy one get one free just helps families get by at some point, and that has been engineered over the past. Well, I'm 50 next year, and it's been engineered over at least the past 40 years. But over the past 2 years, I've never seen anything ramp up so quickly and so heightened, to the point where the government are saying you can't do this, and people are going, okay, well we'll listen to you for now. We'll do this, we'll do that. It's only 10 minutes while I put my mask on. I mean, this has caused so many issues. People who are medically exempt from wearing a mask are being accosted by other people who believe that they're going to kill people because they're not wearing a mask. That is such an irrational. It's almost like I woke up in a different dimension, Clive. It wasn't the dimension I went to sleep in, and I woke up and I'm gone, I spoke to you yesterday. You weren't a dickhead. What's happened?
Well, yeah. I mean, do we wake up in different dimensions? I sometimes wake up in the morning. I don't want to do today. Oh God, I go out to sleep for an hour, and it's like I've woken up in a different dimension. I'm not even. I know so little about everything. I don't even know what shape the planet is for sure.
Well, you can do.
I mean, if we went up to the space station, for instance, and we zoomed in on the equator like Google Earth does, you see the roofs of houses. You just zoom right down it. But when you on Google Earth, it all, wherever you say Iceland and the whole world swivels around, so Iceland is right in the middle and you zoom in. But let's say you zoomed in at Iceland at the top of the world, then everybody would be standing up. Instead of looking at the roof, you'd be seeing them standing up. If it was at the bottom of the world, obviously they'd be standing upside down and the boats and planes would be flying and floating upside down. But Google Earth never show you that. You've never seen a picture of that. You can zoom in from somewhere at the distance of a space station with a Nikon 1000 camera. You can zoom right in, but they've never ever shown that. So, the question is, why not?
Well, that's my point, Clive. It's not about, I think that's what the people think the worst thing that they can throw at me these days is you think the Earth is flat, and I actually don't. I'm set on the same page as you. I haven't got a clue. The problem that I've got is that an 18 billion pound firm that takes payment from the public every year, who took Nazis under proper Project Paperclip over to do this, to have a race against getting a man on the moon where somebody rang from a landline to the moon when I can't be on top of Mount Snowdon and ring home, and there's no question. And that's the ridiculousness of it, because everybody can even say within reason now that, no, we never landed on the moon. Well, that's a big foundational teaching aspect of childhood, that's what we did. This is how many times we've been into space. There's questions about that now. I always have because of the law stuff, Clive, in law, if it's not simple, you're not correct. You're wrong. You've missed something if you're getting complicated. So stick to the simplicities of it. And if you can't answer simple questions without calling people names, that's one thing. If people call you names, I think, there's something in this. But when they're starting to make things illegal to question, that's getting worse. And I've seen that now ramped up with all these agendas that are coming on. I mean, you've got a High Court hearing in 2020 when a Twitter argument went all the way to High Court, and it was because a woman called a trans woman a poster boy for the LGBTQ movement. That went all the way to High Court, and a judge said, you have every right to be offended, but not in law. Next. So, yes, be offended, but you're the one taking offense. I can't give it to you. I'm saying what I say, which I'm allowed to do, allegedly. You are taking offense. Well, be offended. It doesn't matter. I've not done it to offend you, but it doesn't mean that you can be offended and then take anybody you like to court. Yet you've got people being paid £900,000 because they can't use the toilet that they want to use, Clive. The society, there's something sick in society.
Well, it's the psychopaths. It's so simple. Yes. So I wonder, just going back a step, I wonder when we went through those magnesium symptoms, I wonder how many people think they've got one of those, because the importance of it is way more important than most people might think. Because if you're low on magnesium, the people who are low on magnesium, they're the ones who can get seriously ill. Anybody who's got an autoimmune disease, for example, you can bet money that magnesium deficiency is going to be key. And then most people might hear this and they go to a high street shop, right? Commonly named high street shop, and they'll go in and they'll buy the tub of magnesium. It'll say magnesium in big letters, and they'll take it and it won't work. And it might cure their constipation, but the thing is that there are maybe 50 different magnesium salts. There's magnesium chloride, which is Dead Sea salts. There's magnesium oxide, which is rubbish. That's the cheap one that you get in the shops. That, the one that costs the price. It's the price you want to pay. It's $9.99 or $19.99. It's that cheap because it doesn't work. So there's bioavailable magnesium salts, and then ones that really aren't. And the common one that they push is oxide. So you do not want that. You want almost anything else but. And something like, I don't know, 12 years ago or something, I started a small supplement company because it was so difficult to go into a health food store and work out what to buy. because the staff don't really know. There's too much choice in a health food store, really. And then so I realized that a lot of these companies who own high street stores and so on, the ownership's changed now, but an arms dealer or an arms company, the Carlyle Group, who of course intimately tied to the Conservative government, some arms dealers, they owned the UK's largest health food chain. They owned the largest, the most popular brand, Solgar. Now ownership's changed, but you can trust an arms dealer with your health, can't you?
I'm taking that's a rhetorical question, that, mate. This is what I'm saying. Everything when I was in court and they were stealing my property, if you have property stolen, who do you report it to? You report it to the police. Well, who do you report it to if the police are actually helping them steal your property? This is the system that we're stuck in. We're paying for stuff we're not meant to pay for because we can't pay for it. The health system is actually designed to make us ill. If all of this is against us and we're being taught to make sure that we play our part in the system, there's got to be a time where people draw that line. But it's trying to get people to think, Clive. I can't teach anybody anything. I'm still learning, like what you just said earlier. The only thing I know is how little I actually know, because there's so much bollocks and lies that I've had to swallow. And when I've asked questions as a kid, I've been told that's life. As a 6-year-old, I said to my mum, why do I have to get a job when I get older? I'd rather play on my bike. And she rattled off all this stuff about getting a job, getting a house, having kids, getting married, wanting holidays, having cars. And I said, why? And she said, because that's life. And my mum and dad worked like dogs, Clive. 13 hours a day in her own shops. My dad was a long-distance lorry driver back in the day, Clive, where they did 6 nights on, 1 night off, 6 nights back on. You didn't have all this 6 on, 6 off type stuff. So I've seen them work like that. I've seen my dad who was, he'd given an open wage packet to my mum. My mum dealt with everything. And if he wanted anything, there was money there for him. He led a simple life, but he worked like a dog. Now, I had that work ethic given to me, but I didn't want it. And I've always done what I've needed to do. So when I needed to get more money, I got a different job with higher wages. So it's always been when I've had to do something. But to start learning this stuff 10 years ago, to be in court whilst learning it and then trying to act on it and seeing what's happened, Clive, it was a real kick in the balls and at the teeth at the same time, because I was seeing it for me with my own eyes, not somebody telling me that something is wrong. I'm seeing what the establishment system is willing to do to people who question it. And that's, if you can't question these people, that we're in trouble, especially now.
So now is the time. And, I am an optimist, but quite what the next step is, how do we non-comply successfully? How do we knock it all back? Or do some of us charter a plane and leave the country and go somewhere safe? But where is safe? I've been in Mexico several times, and I know lots of people who now have moved to Mexico. But when I was last year, there were police on the beach closing it down so you couldn't go on the beach. But all you had to do is walk slightly out of town, and there weren't enough police to police the miles and miles of beach. It was just where the tourists were or where the locals were living that they... So, where do you go? So the only thing is we have to change. We have to have peaceful global revolution. But we're a little way away from that.
Yeah, I think it's like you said before, it's easy to say these kind of things. It's people, and most people don't know, including us, I suppose. None of us know what to do and where to start with it. But we've all got these little pieces of the puzzle that we all bring together, and we can only do it and hope that people will think. I mean, when I was talking about frequencies and stuff like that that could actually heal people, not only of physical things, but particularly, depression and things like that. I've had my fair share of depression and anxiety issues in the last 10 years. And it tends to make you, especially when you've been put on medication and you don't have a good reaction to it, you strive for something more natural that doesn't turn your world upside down like that. And, you get some looks because people think, well, I know people for a fact that if they're not stood with somebody with a white coat on, they won't believe it. But if they've got that white coat on, they'll believe them.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Just going back one step, because the resistance, so to speak, is obviously infiltrated. Clearly, obviously, every leader of a union is going to be, military intelligence. So what I'm seeing happening is that people are going on strike, which is doing the government's job for them. Going on strike to ruin our economy even more than the government want to ruin it already is crazy. There are people who've been convinced they ought to stand in the park instead of doing something. I mean, yeah, they're having a nice time chatting to their friends or something, standing in the park, but people are going on marches. Now, has a march ever worked ever? I'm not sure I can think of one that really actually changed government from doing whatever they wanted to do. That very rarely happens. But let's say 3 million people want to march. What if they planted food instead? What if that was what they did? 3 million people planted fruit trees, nut trees, people in sensible, all the right places, all the sensible places. And then next week we planted another several million trees. I mean, if we kept the stones from every apricot, every peach, every cherry, we saved up a few walnuts and, whatever we like to eat food-wise. If the world started planting food as a stand of rebellion, we're going to be planting more and more food. Rather than just marching and getting nowhere, we need to be taking, I'm not saying it has to be planting food, but some real action that the world's press could not ignore.
When I was in, just as not an advisor, but with information and stuff with a group who were working on constitutional law, and I genuinely believe that if we did a constitutional challenge against the three branches of government, because don't forget the judiciary are meant to keep the legislature and the executive in check. So these 650 MPs write an act for me and you, Clive. Now that's got to be beneficial for us. That's what an act is. It's got to be beneficial for man. Well, then it goes to the Prime Minister and the executive who put regulations in to tax businesses that will be applicable to that act. Well, the problem is we're all being classed as those businesses. So they're trying to tax us as a man. So the judiciary is meant to police that, but the judiciary are in on it. And until we shine light on that, you just mentioned about marching and protesting. Rob Menard in Canada has got a great definition of protest, which is legal acceptance. You could, the way Rob puts it is you can lie in your bed, shit in your bed, roll about in it and rub it all over you and call it chocolate sauce. It's not beneficial to you, but you might make you feel good. It's the same with your kids. They protest about going to bed and they have that right to protest. But where do they end up? They end up in bed because that's their right. So when we want to protest, we have to apply for a license to go and protest. Well, it's not getting us anywhere. It's this English language, what protest is, what a driver is. It's so simple. And I remember as a kid, my mum was a bit of a stickler for English. And she drummed it into me, Clive, that I must understand the words I use. You could use words that will get you into a lot of trouble if you don't understand what you're using. And she had an example for me one day because I walked right into it. She heard me call somebody a hypocrite. And I just thought it was, I've heard this new word. I'll just throw it in. Yeah, he's a bit of an hypocrite, him. She went, what does that mean? And I went, she went, get out my sight. She would not speak to me until I came back and told her what it meant, why I couldn't use it in that sentence, and what sentence I could use it in. She wouldn't speak to me unless I could do those three things. So because of that, I've always found the English language not easy, but it comes to me quite easily. But that's why I have to look straight away into a dictionary, because we could use the term. It's like when you were talking about universe and stuff like that. Well, I'm doing a theology study at the minute. Well, in Scripture, in the new versions of Bibles and stuff, they've made some very subtle changes that mean a lot in our language. They changed the word charity, and they changed charity to love. You have just changed the context of that scripture, because in order for me to give you charity, Clive, and if that's as a Christian, that's what I should do. I should give you charity. If you can't shelter yourself, feed yourself, and find warmth, I give you charity. I can love you and not give you any of those things. And that's the difference between charity and love. So when you say, yeah, I love the homeless, well, what do you do? Oh, well, I give a quid if I see him lying on the street. Well, that's not charity. If you were giving them charity, you would ask them, have they got shelter? Have they got somewhere? You would take them, and none of us have time to do that. That's how society is being taught. And you know what? It doesn't seem to matter. Most of the countries run off some sort of religion, and it seems without the Christian values, those always seem to peter out. Yet the Christian values are the first ones that are attacked. And if you look at the societies we've got now, you can't say we've got Christian values. You can't say we've got any values. We've got, well, you can do what you like. Just be good to each other. You can do whatever you want. Just don't be a knobhead. Well, I don't know what to do with that kind of stuff, Clive. You know, because that's a different world to what I grew up in. And that is so easily manipulable. I mean, it's 8:10 now. What if at 8:15 to 8:30, Clive, I want to identify as a coffee table? You're going to have to chat to yourself for 15 minutes. It's ridiculous, mate.
It is truly ridiculous. And you mentioned hypocrisy. Of course, the doctors, we think, most of them don't do it anymore, but they're meant to swear the Hippocratic Oath. And
Yes.
of course, what that is first of all, you've got to realize that Hippocrates was a hypocrite. So can you really believe anything he said? And then, what it is, if you really read the words, it's first, do no harm. It does not say what you do second or third.
Yeah.
How are you, Mrs. Jones? I'm not feeling very well. Oh, dear. Well, okay, now you've done no harm. Now, next, we're going to cut your leg off.
Pretty much. I mean, that sounds so simplistic. People go, that's ridiculous. They wouldn't do that. I can tell you now, Clive, that your council tax, right? You were charged council tax on such a childish fact. Your house, no matter what it is capable of being a shop. Is it not? Is your house capable of being a shop? Well, that's why we charge council tax. That's why we charge you council tax, because it's capable. Well, it's also capable of being a space station, but it's going to take me a while to make sure it is a space station and get it up there. So don't charge me council tax until it's a space station. It sounds pretty straightforward and simple, but when you see the pettiness of what's going on in these courtrooms, and you've got the pomposity of judges and barristers, and not all judges and barristers and solicitors, by the way. My experience is we've got a lot of good people still in the justice system. We've had solicitors and barristers chatting with us, and we were talking to them. And they were saying, "Do you know one thing? Because they were the stuff that we were doing and talking about." He said that this one solicitor said it's brilliant, that it's fascinating what you guys are doing. He said, but you always make the same mistakes. And obviously you start sticking your chest out going, what do you mean? And all this. No. The mistake you make is you never come and speak with us. Well, it's because you're in part of the system and you're this, that, and the other. He went, hang on. He says, I pay council tax and you just told me I shouldn't be paying it and I don't understand why. He said, but am I going to put my head above the parapet and lose my house, lose my pension, lose all that if you can't ask the right questions. If you ask the right questions, I will help you all day, every day. But if you don't ask the right questions and you stand in a commercial court going, I'm a man, I have no contract with you, it's pointless.
Yeah, so you don't want to take on the law unless you know what you're doing. You know, if you're going to ask, clearly you want to ask questions, not answer them. But you've got to know in advance, if you ask a question, what the possible answers might be and how you're going to deal with that. It's like chess. You've really got to.
It is.
Well, more than chess, because you've really got to know what you're doing completely before you start.
Do you know what? In these county courts, you know, this is where they fell down early doors with us, because we were dealing with, I don't know, we were dealing with ignorance, if you like. You know, solicitors that would turn up with 2 A4 sheets of paper just to turn up and put them in, not to argue anything, just because they were there to hand documents in. And then when you start cross-examining them, they're going, I don't know anything about this case. I've just been asked to turn up with these documents. So that's what the county court system's like. You can't ask questions. So when you put it in on paper, they purposely ignore everything. And you stood there, Clive, and you're trying to ask questions. I had a judge once involved in my case, and it was a circuit judge. The judge that had been involved in my case was off sick. She was off for about 3 months, and this circuit judge come in for one hearing, and he started to talk to turned out was a partner in the solicitor's firm that I was dealing with, and he was just talking to this solicitor and asking him questions about what he'd done, what about the title numbers and this, that, and the other. Anyway, I kept trying to interject. I was getting annoyed at this point. And he takes his glasses off and he puts them on his desk in front of him. He looks at me, he says, Mr. Webster, he says, I know that you want to have your say. He says, and I promise you, you will get your chance to have your say. He says, but for now, please listen to what I've got to say, because you might hear something that you want to hear. And with that, he put his glasses back on, and all of a sudden I'm sat upright thinking, whoa, hang on a minute. This hasn't happened to me before. And he pulled this solicitor's pants down in front of me, Clive, and bummed him all over the place, because he said, what you're telling me is that out of these properties that you've sold, 3 title numbers, you've sold all 3 titles under one title, and your excuse is that there is no boundary line on the photograph. You're telling me you haven't done your due diligence as a solicitor? Sorry, I can't award you this property. Mr. Webster, is there anything you'd like to say? And I couldn't speak for a second. And I just went, yeah, I'd like restoration of that property. It's mine. And he looked back at the solicitor and said, did you hear what that man just said? Packed his stuff up and he went to walk out. I said, excuse me, sir, can I just say that you're the only decent man that I've met in 5 years of this court system as a judge? And he looked at me, smiled and shrugged his shoulders and walked out. And that was the only decent judge, because he did his job. He wasn't there to do me, but he wasn't there to help me either. But he was there to say, you've got something, shut up and listen. You've got something that I'm not going to go against you here, shut up. And that's what we tend to not do. We go in there accusing. That's not the way. Let's go in and ask questions. If we go in and ask questions, you're saying that I owe this bill. How can I pay this bill in a debt-based economy? You get somewhere better. So injunctions against companies that are, you know, if a company says, I've got this claim against you, you can put an injunction in. It stops them. It gives you your day in court, and you can instruct the judge as to why that injunction should stop them doing what they're doing. These are all theories that people at some point will have to take on. But if we'd done it 10 years ago, Clive, we'd have changed things. We're talking about a big reset now. We're talking about cashless societies. We're talking about 2-tiered societies. We're talking about the world being divided into 2-tier systems that can only go. Seen anything on this scale? It's unprecedented. It's every country. You said go to Mexico. I know that Mexico's been a bit of a bolt hole for people, because it's I wouldn't say it's behind everybody else, but it's a more relaxed than what is coming for us. I mean, Australia, New Zealand, complete prison colonies. Canada creeping into it, Joe Biden saying we've been patient enough, get your vaccine, it's coming here. You know, is it time to ditch your unvaccinated friends? We're not far off, and I can't see us complying to get our rights back. Can you?
I don't know how it's going to work. I mean, one of the reasons that Mexico is freer than many other places is because just like the United States, people can legally own guns there. So, do you know about Chiran in Mexico, who declared themselves an autonomous zone about a decade ago? Do you know about that one?
No, I didn't know the name, but I had heard that there was a colony trying to claim that they were on their own type thing.
Well, there are 4 out there, but Chiran was the first one. And what happened was the town was totally corrupt, about 30,000 people in then outlying villages and forests and stuff. And the corruption had got overwhelming. So now really the people who run the place were the cartels. And it got to such a state that the cartels were coming in lorries with machine guns and cutting down all the trees, which were the livelihood of the area to a large degree, and stealing the lot. And it so incensed the locals that the women armed themselves to the teeth, literally, and threw out the government at gunpoint. Then they went and threw out the police at gunpoint. They threw out the army at gunpoint and set up roadblocks and declared themselves an autonomous zone. And I met some of the sort of leaders of the Chiran who is running the place now, and they have crime has ended because they threw everybody out. You know, in a town of 30,000, you know pretty much who people are.
Yeah.
So they chucked people out, and you're asked at the border, are you a politician? If you say yes, they won't let you in. And it's all very nice, thank you. My friend Eleanor, who I used to work with, is living out there, and so I get regular reports. And I asked the leaders of the place, well, why hasn't the government taken it back? And they said, well, we're so revolutionary here and armed that they're afraid the whole state will rebel if they try and take the Chiran district back. So they haven't. So that, you know, it's not that many Mexicans pay tax anyway, but there are lots of advantages about being an autonomous zone. You can run your own affairs. And
again, if you look at the border, if you look at the border, Clive, you've got cartels shooting live ammunition into America at ranges. There's no border whatsoever. That shows just how bold that drug cartels are and how looked after how big they've got, that they can open fire onto American soil and nothing happen. You know, it's I think I don't know if it's the right term to say that no, it's not the right term, but I don't know what it is about the British. If you put a football involved in it, everybody wants to fight for that football. Everybody wants to fight about winning that football and winning trophies, and you know, we'll all argue about that. And we're told that this country's doing this, so we all want to go and fight against them. Where do we get to the point, Clive, where instead of somebody going, let's do this, and everybody going, right, yes, hang on a minute, why don't we think? Why don't we talk? We're trying to get all these little groups together. You were talking about the stand in the park. I went to a couple of them just to see if there was anybody who I wouldn't expect to be there, you know, people who aren't running about telling us about the Illuminati and MTV and the entertainment industry all being satanic. See people who still pay the bills, who still pay everything and don't understand why everything's going wrong. Those people, and there were actually those people there, Clive, who don't know what, you know, why are we being forced to take this? And, you know, these tests, they don't even test for what the test's saying they're testing for. So it seems useless to me. And they're asking other people to see if they're right because they're scared to be the nutter. You know, when I said to people 10 years ago that your gas is free, that was a tagline, hopefully, in hope that people go, your gas is free? That sounds ridiculous. Tell me more. But it wasn't. You're a dickhead. That's all I got. whereas people did not even bother to break it down. And it was like trying to throw a pebble and make it just go straight in the water, but you're throwing it at such an angle, it's bouncing and bouncing and bouncing and bouncing and bouncing, misses the target completely. So what you were saying before about giving people facts, you can't. People don't want facts. People want aimless chit chat. But I have this ability to be able to change a conversation and bring something into it. Football, whatever it is. Somebody talked about Mo Salah's wages at Liverpool. Well, money's not real. That's why he gets that kind of money. What do you mean it's not real? It's just numbers in a bank account. He kicks a ball about. And everybody wants to follow him and watch him and listen to what he says. He's a trendsetter. People follow him. They'll pay him all the money that he needs and all the cars and all everything because people want to be him. People want to be like him. And while that's happening, they don't care that the grandma's getting put into a care home and her house is being sold to pay for it, but we're going to kill her off within a matter of weeks anyway. No, it's all about getting rid of the old and programming the new. They want the kids from 18-month-old now, Clive. They're going to do a number on all the kids. The kids will end up just like 1984. They'll be turning the parents in.
Well, exactly. I mean, a great example, I think, of things that are upside down is the way they call us about all of this. I mean, take Speaker's Corner. Most people believe that Speaker's Corner in London is this place of freedom where people can freely speak, even if they're speaking against the government. But the reality was that people being taken into London to be hanged were allowed to speak briefly before the hanging at Speaker's Corner, before they were killed. Yeah. That's the real origin of the place. But people are still waking up. For the first time recently, I've been able to sway people from dyed in the wool, vax is good, to no, it's not. It's taken me at least a year, more than a year. Well, since the beginning, it's only very recently that I've been able to learn what the words are.
Come on, Clive, you've come back every time.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Say again.
Are you back? No, just a couple of times during the show, your internet's gone and it has to reboot and you come back. So your screen had just gone black and I couldn't hear you.
Oh dear.
So just reiterate what you were saying, mate.
I was mentioning about Speaker's Corner, that it was the place that you used to get one last chance to speak before you got hanged, and not what people think. I can't remember what I said after that. Should we talk a little bit more about how to stay healthy in these worrying times?
It's about people waking up.
Oh, well, yeah. Yes, for the first time ever, I've actually been able to wake people up. That was what I was saying. For the last year and a half, I could tell people any bit of truthful information, and they were just blank. But finally, people are waking up, and a lot of the people who are waking up are the ones who have suddenly realized that the vaccines made them ill. I've heard several people say things like, "Well, I was terribly ill after the first vaccine, but I'm looking forward to having the booster." Really? My dad's carer got Bell's palsy.
I know. I couldn't get over. I couldn't get over him. Exactly.
So, I think the line is breaking up rather badly. But my dad's carer, even though
I think we're a bit delayed. The internet's a bit.
Yes, there's a delay on the line. Shall I just talk anyway? People are in total denial. I get the feeling you're not hearing me.
Yeah, you keep talking, mate, and I'll jump in after.
All right, brilliant. So I just wanted to finish what I was saying about magnesium, because people who've heard me talk about magnesium might say, well, I've tried 2 magnesiums a day, or 1 a day, or even 4 a day. But if it's the wrong type, then they won't have had success. But many people that I've stopped doing consultations for new clients. But when I would often say to clients, look, consider taking 12 magnesium capsules in a day of the right type. Not 2, not 1, not 4, 12, because almost everybody has got low magnesium levels right now because stress burns up magnesium. And I think it's fair to say that the entire population is way more stressed than they ought to be. And it's not just the worry and the fear, it's other stresses like 5G and chemtrails and poison in the water and eating poisoned food. So people really need to understand that all of us, myself included, even though I try to eat the healthiest and most natural food out there, and I go foraging in the wild, and just today I was out picking wild mushrooms. It's now's the time, but you got to know what you're looking for. You don't want to get that wrong. But we're all so low on magnesium because of the stress. You look at a footballer, for instance. Footballers quite often at the end of a match get a heart attack. Why is that? It's because they sweated out in the match all the magnesium, and magnesium is the mineral that allows relaxation. It relaxes the bowels so it can end constipation. It relaxes the mind so it can end depression. It relaxes the heart. And a heartbeat, there's a sort of calcium magnesium thing going on. So calcium allows the heart to contract. Magnesium allows it to expand. So if you've sweated out all the magnesium, suddenly somebody takes an in-breath and has a heart attack because their heart can't release. Their heart has gone into spasm, into a cramp. So if you're getting a muscle cramp, for instance, you've got to be aware that if that muscle was your heart muscle, that could be a heart attack. So all those symptoms I went through earlier are warning signs. You get a muscle cramp, you get constipated. They're all warning signs of something's wrong. You're eating the wrong foods, or simply the foods you are eating had no magnesium in the first place. The problem is that modern farming methods, modern agriculture has ended up stripping the soil of nutrients. And a great example of this is wheat. When I was young, I don't remember anybody having a problem with wheat. I'd never heard the word gluten. Everybody I knew ate bread, just no problem. Then they hybridized it with the new dwarf wheat, which changed the DNA of wheat. So a lot of people started having problems then. Then they started spraying, glyphosate, Roundup, Bayer, Monsanto's poison, herbicide, and that congregates in the gluten primarily. So a lot of people found that gluten-free meant poison-free. So what I recommend to everyone, number one, what's the number one health thing you could do? I could say get some sunshine. I could say get out in nature. I could say smile. Lots of things I could say, but one of the keys is don't poison yourself willingly. If you go to the shops, don't buy processed food with chemical ingredients that you don't understand what they are. Most food, unfortunately, is poisoned. I went into Asda years ago with a camera, and I was looking, as a reporter, so to speak, looking for food that wasn't poisoned. I couldn't find any. It all had something wrong with it. It had either been pasteurized, or it had got preservatives or colorings or flavorings, or that it weren't natural, And bread these days is an appalling example of this. If it says flour improver on the bread, that's bromine, that's poisonous. But when the wheat grew, when I was young, it would grow about 6 foot, 5 foot high, and they'd harvest it, and then they'd burn the stubble down to the ground. So minerals aren't damaged by heat. So by burning the stubble to the ground, they just put all the minerals back in the soil. But now the government said, oh, stop that burning stuff. It's bad for the environment. So they take the stubble and dump it somewhere. And then they now have to use chemicals to grow the stuff properly. But with every harvest, you can imagine the soil is getting emptier and emptier and emptier as they strip it all away. So most food might look all right, but it doesn't mean it's really got any nutrition. And then, so the minerals, that's the mineral side. The vitamin side is that if you pick, the red pepper or the fruit or whatever it is that's got, most vegetables got some vitamin C in, the moment you pick it, you've killed the vegetable essentially at one level. And so all the vitamins are deteriorating with time, with exposure to heat and so on. So by the time it's gone through, you know, the local supermarket, Deathco, or wherever it is you shop, but by the time it's arrived at Deathco, then come to your fruit bowl or your vegetable tray, there's very little vitamins left. So basically, everybody in the world pretty much isn't eating fresh food, so that we're all starving. You know, somebody who's massively overweight, the chances are they're starving more than the others because they're so desperate for minerals that they're eating, trying to get the basic nutrition that keeps them healthy, keeps them alive. So it's a sad state of affairs that these days most people have to supplement with vitamin C, magnesium, vitamin D in winter. You know, an example of vitamin D is I used to get a cold every year, several times a year, until I realized it was only in winter generally. And I started taking vitamin D in winter, for me, 10,000 IUs, and I've never had a sniffle in 15 years. So, you know, there are people who are low on iodine. Everybody who goes swimming in a chlorinated pool or isn't filtering their shower water or their bath water, or they're drinking liquids with chlorine in it, like tap water, if they're using fluoride toothpaste, if they're eating bread in packets with flour improver, they're all getting their iodine depleted by accidentally absorbing chlorine, fluoride, and bromine. They all deplete iodine. And iodine mainly is in the thyroid. So anybody's got a thyroid issue, you can always bet that they're iodine deficient. In women, iodine is secondly in the breasts. So Japanese women, for instance, who get a lot of iodine with all the seaweed and fish they eat, they don't get breast cancer, spelled with a K, nearly as much as English women do, or American women. And similarly, they don't have the thyroid issues that they do where they're not eating seaweed, because iodine is mainly in seaweed. So if you're living on the coast, you're getting iodine, you're breathing it in through the seaweed sort of in the sea. But people who are inland have a real problem with iodine deficiency. Some people say to me, oh, I've got brain fog. I can't think clearly. I used to walk in a room and remember, but now I walk in a room and I can't remember why I walked in. They say I've got dry skin. I'm hungry all the time, putting on weight, you know, all sorts of iodine issues and iodine deficiency issues. So if you are like that, you've got brain fog, you can't think clearly, you may well, like 95% of the rest of us, be low on iodine. So I take about 10 drops of full strength Lugol's iodine in water once every 10 days or 2 weeks. And you know, iodine is about IQ, it's about body temperature. People who've got cold hands and feet wear socks in bed. People like menopausal women, out of control, hot. It's iodine that controls, along the thyroid, controls temperature control. And back in the old days, when a doctor 150 years ago didn't know what was wrong with somebody, they give them iodine as a standard thing because it works in so many cases. How safe is it? Well, they still use it in operating theatres before they cut you open. They paint you with loads of iodine because iodine stops infections. You know, nothing can, no bacteria or anything is going to be able to stand in the way of iodine. Iodine will massacre it. So everybody's low on magnesium, everybody's low on iodine, pretty much everybody's low, you know, when I say everybody, 95% on vitamin C, pretty much everybody's low on vitamin D in winter if they're not getting sunshine. You know, there are just a few common things. There are people who are vegan, for instance, they're likely to be low on vitamin B12, the amino acid taurine, you know, Taurus the bull, and they're likely to be low on vitamin K2, which you only get from grass-fed animal products or natto. But people don't realize that if you're vegan for too long and your B12 levels go too low, the doctors don't know how to properly test B12 levels. So just because the doctor says, I know you're exhausted and you hardly feel you can do anything, but your B12 levels are fine, that's because they don't know how to measure B12 because they don't study that. You know, 4 hours on health, they don't know. Not really, not many of them anyway. So the symptoms of low B12 can look like Parkinson's disease. B12 deficiency can look like multiple sclerosis. B12 deficiency can be mistaken by doctors for dementia. So it's important to understand that, again, when I was, things have changed so much. When I was young, the cream meant the best. If you wanted good meat to eat, it would always have the most fat, the fat of the land, the cream of the crop. And things have changed. They started telling people that cholesterol is bad, that natural fats like butter or lard or dripping or sea fish or something, all that fat was bad for you. And they created the dementia, Alzheimer's epidemic that's rife now. And when the government is trying to persuade everybody to go vegan, you can bet your bottom dollar that would be the worst thing for your health, because the government are trying to encourage it. I'm hoping you're hearing me.
That's yeah. No, you're coming through with everything. It's a bit Norman Collier because of the internet. I don't think it's my end, Live. I think it might be your end. It'll pause and then it'll go blah 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 and catch up. But you're coming through. Okay. What I was going to ask you: did you see any difference after 2009 when Codex Alimentarius kicked in? Because I was listening to a lot of things coming from Codex where they were saying things like vitamin B6 and things like that were going to be classed as toxins. So things that were good for you under Codex were going to be classed as toxin.
Well, the first thing that I noticed was, you probably remember, there used to be Chinese herbalists in almost every high street, and they were immediately out of a job because the law had changed. And even though they might have been a herbalist all their life, there might be the family tradition going back 4,000 years, instantly with the Codex coming in, they were banned. And so there were lots of people who loved going to the Chinese herbalists, but then herbs became illegal, and advice about herbs even more illegal, It's an insane world. But the Codex thing, as I'm sure you know more than most, it was Napoleonic law. English law used to be that you could do anything you like so long as there wasn't a law against it. Napoleonic European law is you can't do anything unless it's specifically written down in a codex and allowed. And that's, another freedom that the British government gave away. But it's all a global, it's all a global.
Like I say, it's when. Yeah, it's the factor is it's all been done in so little micromanaged amounts in all these other countries, because we're seeing a worldwide thing now, but this has gone off singularly in every country, in every township, in every city. The element of this has been fed to everything. So that means that every single piece of media, from your local rag to your your county, to your region, to your national, to your international news, are all being fed by the same people. And those same people taught me to work hard and pay my bills in a debt-based economy. So straight away, Clive, all I can see is not theories, but just conspiracy against me from when my arse was smacked and I took my first breath until they want to put me in a grave. And it looks like they want to put me in a camp before they do that.
Well, yes, clearly. They're building internment camps around the world, particularly in all the English-speaking countries, all Her Majesty's countries. And there's this big prison town built in England with lake views. And it's just outrageous. They are planning to lock up the unvaccinated and are already doing it. In Australia, as you know, they've already announced that the unvaccinated will be put into internment camps. But it's worse than the communist era. I mean, now in Canada, if you haven't been double jabbed, you can't leave the country. Obviously, all of this is designed to confuse everybody, so people just give up and comply. But at the end of the day, what if 10% of people really put their effort into not complying? How many of us does it take before people wake up to it? But You know, as I mentioned earlier, it's not that we should go on strike. We've got to do the opposite. We've got to decide what positive moves can we make. What if 1 million people, what if everybody printed 10 leaflets on their photocopier, 20 leaflets? What if those leaflets were really intelligently written? And, you know, like the Jehovah's Witnesses, not people aren't going to like it. I'm just suggesting ideas. I don't know. But could it be that we need to knock door to door and, using nonviolent communication, try to explain to people who are open that just maybe there's a better way? I mean, you know, one's got to pick one's wars and pick one's arguments. What can one say that might work? What is emotive? Well, puppy dogs, fluffy kittens, babies, you know, there are emotive subjects. I mean, I used to, 20 years ago, I used to say to people, do you realize that, I say to older people, do you remember when you were young, how the insects in spring, when you were driving, after an hour, you had to clean all the dead insects off your windscreen because you couldn't see out of it. You know, at night, you had to clean your headlights because of all the dead insects, and now they've gone. And with that visual thing, there used to be insects all over your windscreen. People who are, let's say, a minimum of 40 years old suddenly realize, oh my God, you're right. Where have all the insects gone? You know, on the windscreen of your car right now, are there any dead insects? Because 40 years ago, there would have been Armageddon on your windscreen. And the young people don't know. They don't know that the bats are disappearing. They don't realize that because the insects have gone, that the bird life is totally different to what it used to be. You know, they're unaware. And why we have to act now and immediately stop what's going on is because the children are going to think it's normal. 20 years' time, you know, children of a totalitarian regime where history has all been rewritten, anyway, now's the time to act.
It's almost like we could have like some documents from way back that we could read and go, hey, this has happened before. You know, it's ridiculous. Living this again, and it doesn't seem to matter how many times. All they need is that 2 generations of people. And me and my mate had a conversation a couple of days back where if the things that have been available to me as a 13, 14-year-old that are available now, I would have been lost as well, Clive. They'd have had me. They'd have taken me straight away. Just telling me that I could play FIFA in my own brain with a brain chip at 14 would have brought me. I would have done anything for stuff like that. So when you've got kids and you bring them into this world now, if I look out now, and if I was to try and instill Christian beliefs or anything like that from scripture, it falls on a lot of deaf ears because we've got the new age stuff, we've got energies, we've got frequencies, we've then got the hardcore religions that have like killed and massacred people from different other religions all over the place. So you're basically left with this mash of things where people just go, well, I'll just be good to people. And that means there's no religion, there's no God, there's all about this big bang where something happens to nothing and here we all are. Well, what if that's a lie? What if all that is a lie? We were talking about the shape of the earth. Well, if you want to get rid of a God, of the creator God, if you want to get rid of God, let's have something happening to nothing and here we are. Because I don't know how much further you could get from a creator God than there's nothing, bang, here we are. You know,
it's deliberately sent to confuse us, isn't it?
It so is, and that cognitive dissonance that you create within yourself, then all of a sudden somebody will, while you're batting it about to and fro, somebody will go, do that, and you'll just go, right, okay, and you just go and do it. Now, for me, if we're being told that on everything, so we all know that it happens in politics, but now we see the black and white, the yin, the yang. We see all the good, the evil. You can't have the good without the evil. You can't have the dark without the light. I get all that. And I get it's all about us being able to restrain ourselves, that energy, because we are these creators. We are made in the image of God. We can create. But the problem is, We think we can do it. We think we can fix it. But then when we can't fix it, we look for God, or we look for a God, and we'll build a statue and we'll pray to that. Well, you know what? I could pray to a statue all day, every day. Nothing's going to happen. It's about what you do, what your energies are. For me, I went through all that, Clive. I went through all the religions. I've never been fortunately, I never got, dogmatized by any religion. My mum and dad were both Methodist. What that meant to them that was the schools they went to. My mum was very upset with me one day when I came home as about an 8-year-old. And, back in the day, Clive, where you just went out and nobody saw you for 8 hours, and then you come home and your mum would go, "Oh, where have you been all day?" Well, I walked into, mum had a newsagent at the time, and she looks up from the newspapers as I walk in the shop, and she goes, "Oh, where have you been?" Carried on with the job, and I went, "Been praying." She went, "What?" I said, "I've been praying." She went, "Where have you been?" I went, "Sacred Heart." She went, "That's bloody Catholic." I went, and what's the point? What's the difference? And she couldn't tell me, Clive. She couldn't tell me what the difference was. I mean, having had to sit through Catholic and Church of England services as part of my job at one point, the only difference is about 20 minutes. That's it. That's the only difference, because they were the same sermons preached by the same one. The vicar priest did both services. They were both there. It was strange that they both agreed on everything. And I could never work out this religion stuff. So when I was going round, I'm looking for something, because I've always known there's something after this life. 15 years ago, I was doing mediumship. I was asked to go around spiritualist churches because I was quite good at it. I never heard spirit, never saw spirit, but I get images that I'd interpret and people would take them. I didn't know where that was coming from. But out of all those religions, being inducted into the Tao, which is basically energies, ordering from you and all that kind of stuff, I understood it, but I was always left lacking. And that's when I was born again in 2017. And it was only because everything that has happened to me, Clive, destroyed me. They stole everything off me, all my inheritance, what my mum and dad worked for, left me on the floor with nothing. 2016, nobody could get hold of me. Somebody turned up at my house at 7:10 in the morning, and they picked me up off the bathroom floor, passed out. And the first words out of my mouth, Clive, was, "Your gas is free." You're in a bad place. You're in a bad place when that's happening. And I was told in no uncertain terms, I had to pull my pants up and get my act together, because I was killing myself. And it was because of what this system had done to me. And I went through months and months of these weird dreams of a night where they were very vivid, these dreams. And I was fighting in Israel using M16s. I could smell the smoke. I was waking up with bruises where I was leaning on rubble. It was a very weird time. Then I was going to work and doing a full day's work. One morning, a voice in my ear woke me up at 4:10, Clive, and it said, "It is done." I opened my eyes and I said, that was Jesus. I had no idea why I said that. I couldn't work it out at all. Went to work that day, thought about it all day, came home, and I read Revelations again. Read it before, just words. This time, though, out of everything that was going on, Clive, Revelation started to go, well, all right, she did that, he did that, they've done that, they've took that, all those have done that, yeah. What part did you play? Where's your responsibility in all this? And because I was that busy involved in all of that, Clive, I never even thought of it. And then I realised what I'd done, my part that I played in the last 10 years leading up to that. And I accepted what I'd done wrong, but I'd never accepted it before because I'd never realised it. When I then read the gospel, which I'd read time and time again, and I understood it because it's law, Clive. Law is simple. All it states is, if you believe in Jesus, he died for your sins, you are saved, stop being naughty, and that's it. Now, that sounds too simple because wanting to believe in something and believing is so far apart. It's dark now. It's nearly 9 o'clock. It's dark outside. There's nobody I could convince that it's daylight and the sun is beaming. That's how far it was with that. And then all of a sudden, when I read the gospel this time, after that experience, I didn't have a question, Clive. And that is the only way I can describe that, how I got to that stage. I can't say I did this, and this, and that's why I believe. I didn't believe. I wanted to, but I didn't. And then it's only because I was a broken man, Clive. I had nothing left. And people could just say, oh, well, you've had a breakdown, you've lost your mind. Well, that would have been great the first time if I'd not seen everything else happen after that, because from 2017 and that happening, Clive, I got my life together. I got up with a smile on my face, not opening my eyes and the first thought, not another day, not another one. I'd given up on everything. And then all of a sudden, life's worth living again. Until the past year, that's a different story. I've got court cases about to start. Depending on it's about to start. So I've been horrendously attacked over the past year, and it started with masks. And these people obviously didn't understand that I had a medical exemption. They just thought, it's Webby. He's just being Webby. And they were wrong. They were wrong. And they've caused so much issues about it. And it's destroyed lives. What it's done in the past 2 years for everybody, it's destroyed people's lives. I can't stand seeing people waving at the nan through an inch of plate glass because they're too scared. Go and hug her. Well, I might give her a cold. Well, they're going to kill her anyway, so go and hug her.
Unfortunately, from my end, you're coming out like a robot, and I can't actually hear what you're saying. But I heard you talking about wanting to hug Granny, that side of it. And the problem is they've been killing people with the drugs remdesivir and others like it. And the people who died in the nursing homes, they didn't really die from what people are told. They died because they were given drugs, and many of the high ups in the government had shares. When you start following the money and you see who benefits from a lot of the suppliers of the masks, the suppliers of everything, you suddenly realize it's just total corruption. All the figures that you know the names of, they or their brother or their dog or their dog's trust have got very, very rich out of this crisis. Super criminal, but the whole thing has to end.
Yeah, it certainly does. I'm getting a lot of feedback saying that the sound's pretty bad. So we've only got 5 minutes left, Clive. So do you want to you're coming through okay. So do you want to just tell people what you're doing now and where they can find your work and start, improving the health and improving the life?
Yeah. So I'm not allowed to say the name of my website because I'm one of the few people in the country that has been banned from using the word coronavirus and COVID-19. I'm not allowed to say that legally. I've got it in writing from the MHRA. And they made me take down my website from all YouTube because that would be advertising if I were to say it while recommending that you research. I'm not recommending you do anything. I'm recommending you research some of what I've said. But I do have a website, cunningly as my name.com. Not that I'm allowed to tell you that. And then I've got a second website, which is a private members club, because, of course, in a club, you can say things and do things which are in the private. And so you can join my private members club. It does cost money. I'm sorry about that. And it's called secrethealthclub.com, secrethealthclub.com. And the moment you do, you get discounts on stuff. It sort of pays for itself. But basically what I found is, like starting a supplement company years ago, I just wanted to try and simplify it so that, I haven't got many products on my website because I've actually over the years shrunk a lot of the products down, realizing that actually some of the herbs I used to recommend aren't nearly as important as I thought, because actually magnesium, vitamin C, vitamin D, so on are the root of the problem in the first place. And a lot of people are taking more things than they need to. Anyway, with the Secret Health Club, when they started attacking me and making me take my videos down, I started creating a library of information, mainly videos, but also articles as well, so that I myself and others could look up, let's say, Alzheimer's or autism or whatever it is, and there are not millions of videos like you might get from a search engine, but just a few that are what I think are key. You want to recover from something irrecoverable, or you want to learn more about iodine, how much is the right amount to take, how often should you do it? So I'm very pleased with it as a resource. There are videos, for instance, showing mothers understanding what their newborn is saying. Newborns have language. Most people don't know it. There are videos about children who are taught to see without their eyes, right? Blindfolded children, they can't see anything, playing games, writing, drawing, painting, doing everything as normal, because it turns out that there is another way to see that does not involve eyes, and children up to about 13 can in many cases be taught how to do it in minutes. So there's information that you wouldn't normally hear on the Secret Health Club. As I say, I'm very, very pleased with it, because now I'm not doing consultations anymore. I'm just too busy. I can say to people, well, look, I know I can't do a consultation for you, but a lot cheaper than what I used to charge, you can probably, hopefully, find the information you need on there. And as you know, I'm very keen on frequency devices, Tesla's inventions. People don't know that Tesla invented healing devices, which were so common, it's ridiculous. And I just tracked one down just now in India, a really fantastic set. So I restore some of these things and supply them to particularly keen people and practitioners. There's lots of interesting stuff to learn, and we need to learn how to self-repair ourselves, because you get a cavity in your tooth, you can regrow that. People don't realize this stuff. I'm pausing for the risk of you talking over me, because I know we're coming up to the hour. So thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to you. I really, really appreciate it. And, I'm very happy to come on again and answer specific questions. If somebody's got health issues they need dealing with, I'd be very happy to do my best to try and point them in the right direction.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Clive. I'm hoping you can hear me as best as I can anyway. But yeah, I'd love to have you back on when I've got a better internet connection, which I'll be back at home tomorrow, so we'll have a better internet connection. But I have got some specific questions, especially about the thyroid. What would be?
I think it's probably your end that's
best.
got.
I've already mentioned iodine for it. Thyroid.
Yeah, selenium. Selenium is the next thing that goes with iodine. Very important. But again, like everything, there's the right type of selenium and then the ineffective type. Yeah. Selenium is so important. I've had various people who've given up their addictions because of taking selenium. I had somebody the other day, or a few people, who've got their hair color back. I mean, it hasn't happened for me, but super interesting material, selenium, and it's one of the big ones that's missing from the soil. So I
didn't get any of that, Clive. The internet's going mad here, so we're gonna have to call it a day. I'll ping you a message, and then we'll set something up for it in a few more weeks, and because I know I'm going to get a lot of feedback from this. Just before you've gone,
this
internet's awful. If you can still hear me, guys, if I'm still live, if everybody can still hear me, I know somebody in the chat room has said about meetings. There's going to be a meeting at the Presidential in Ashton in Makerfield tomorrow night. That's Thursday the 28th at 8 p.m. Ashton in Makerfield near Wigan.
I think we're going to have to continue another time, because apart from Wigan, I think we've seemed to have lost our dear Mr. Webster. So thank you very much. If you can still hear me, lots of love to you all. Bye-bye.
Well, I don't know if anybody's still left here. Obviously, Clive gave up when the internet cut off. So if anybody can still hear me, I'll just like to say thank you for everybody who's been in the chat room tonight. Hope that they've got some new information to go and look at with as in regards to health products. We really are all in this together, but we need to stop being separate from each other, and we're doing it ourselves. Hopefully I can have Clive back on and we'll have a better internet connection. It's a bit dodgy up here. We've still got a mast down, but that's been down for over a year, so I can't see him rushing out to fix anything. But people who mentioned in the chat room about any meetings, there'll be a meeting what we hold tomorrow at the Presidential in Ashton Makerfield at Wigan. That'll be from 8 p.m. tomorrow night. The lads will be there. There's a few people said that they may turn up, so the lads will be there in the Presidential. You won't be able to miss them. Just mention you and chat. Just come and talk. Have questions or opinions, whatever. But have something. Don't just come in with a closed mind. Realise that. Have a bit of humility. We've been lied to. From our cradle to the grave, we are told lies by the people we trust the most. That's normally our parents. And our parents were told those lies by their parents and so on. So if you have 2 generations, you can create what society you want. They're creating a pretty sick society at the minute. And it doesn't look like there's much being done about it. But there's a lot going on. Just got to keep the faith, guys. Night, God bless.